Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-ones in session in English or in French, and also do group setting. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550. And our website can be found at lifecoachdanamzalak.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our ninth episode of season 13, a special guest, author, and entrepreneur, Dr. Eric Holsapple. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I'm an entrepreneur, real estate developer, and a lot of other businesses in my background. And I've also taught at university for 20 years in the business school at Colorado State University. And I've been practicing mindfulness for about 30 years, and I've found a way to merge both together. Running a mindful business, and I found it very impactful community and for the people in the business. And I've written a book to share that with the business community at large called Profit with Presence, the 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for being a part of this podcast. And as you know, and like I tell all of my guests or all my speakers and guests attending this show, we don't prepare the questions, okay? Because a lot of, I know in the past, people say, hey, can I send you a list of questions? We don't do that. For us, we just basically surf the wave and we have fun. That's the most important part. Now, what brought you to be able to bring in the mindful aspect in business? Do you feel that this is lacking in most entrepreneurs in the 21st century?
I think it's lacking in the world. I think that's why we see the divisiveness and all the loggerheads and gridlock that we have. And it's so many people say to me, mindfulness is woo-woo, it's all sing kumanya and hold hands. And I say, you know what, I think what we're seeing in the world is woo-woo, where we're so distracted. Mindfulness to me is basically focus, and happiness with focus. So how it came into our business was, really one person at a time. First me, and I was more or less a closet meditator, and just changed. I just changed my perspective of how I viewed the world and how I viewed business. And then kind of one by one, as I worked with people in business and had opportunities and was more present for them, people were having different struggles, and I would introduce them, and I would just share what I was doing and introduce them kind of one at a time. And then we started a seed group. And first there was a couple people in the meeting, and before I knew it, the room was full. A little bit later, we brought in mindful-based stress reduction, an 8-week program, and the management group revisited the vision statement and called it Mindfully Creating Community. And it's just been a game changer. It's been happier people, less turnover, better health, and more production. And I'm just about sharing it with the world because I think it could make a difference for business and for humanity.
So the group that you mentioned about living in the gap, why the word gap? Tell me what's the underlying meaning behind that?
Well, we have some 6,000 thoughts a day.
Yes.
A lot of them not that productive, not that positive. And I find that stress and anxiety reside in thought, and that peace and harmony, tranquility, happiness reside in the gaps. When the thought slows down a little bit and there's a little bit of a gap when one thought stops before the next one starts. So it's primarily that, starting to notice a separation between thoughts and who we truly are, in our spiritual life or our consciousness, or wherever, I call it presence. That we notice that we have thoughts, but boys, I'm sure glad I don't have to follow all my thoughts, because all my thoughts aren't that wholesome.
So how do you practice, Eric, in terms of changing those thoughts, because again, as you said, there's 60,000 thoughts coming in, which is approximately one thought per second. What would you say people who are dealing with limiting belief or dealing with imposter syndrome, especially when they go and try to promote their product or services or whatever,
Mhm.
how do you guide them in changing those thoughts?
Well, the first is to have an intention to start to make a change, right? To have an intention to say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm gonna change. And then it's really working on awareness. Now, it can be, I find the most effective thing for myself and many to be formal meditation. Not everybody's up to that. So extended time in nature or some other things may be, you know, for people that don't want to do that. But I teach, starting with a very short 2-minute meditation session, because I find a longer session when you start can be counterproductive, because when we start focusing on it, it brings more anxiety to say, oh my God, that thing's really busy, that mind of mine. Yes. And we haven't really stopped to notice. So when you stop to notice, I say do 2 minutes. And then when you have that down, so it's a habit, work to 3 or 4 or 5, work it up slowly, because as the mind slows down, we want more. But if we like sit down and say, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes the first few times, I find that people just throw up their hands and go, I can't meditate. That's too hard. So start slow and do it. Consistency is more important than the length of time. And just start knowing, and also then just start other little practices like gratitude is just so mindful, and it's so helpful and so easy. Just a few minutes a day of practicing gratitude, or paying attention to when we're washing our hands or whatever we're doing, and just trying to be present, having the intention of actually being with who we're with and doing what we're doing versus, somewhere else all the time.
So do you feel like, I know I've read a lot of books about mindfulness, especially the one from Eckhart Tolle, The Power of
Yeah, he's
Now.
a superstar.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Has that book impacted you in some way
Oh,
to,
unbelievable. Yeah.
to be able to kind of like implement your strategies and how to
Mm.
help others achieve the same goal?
Yeah, he's got a couple of books, right? The Power of Now. And then he's got a second book, A New Earth, Discovering Your Life's Purpose. That book is really a game changer. He talks in that book about having an inner purpose and an outer purpose. Inner purpose to be waking up to who we truly are, just being conscious, and having our life's purpose to be about recognizing consciousness and being awake. And then the second purpose is more of an outer purpose of what I'm doing. I'm a real estate developer, I'm a podcaster, I'm a baseball coach, I'm a teacher, whatever it is, that role. And the goal being, to fulfill my inner purpose of being present in while I'm fulfilling those roles. And if I can do that, then everything changes. So yeah, he's great. I mean, he's a little tough to read.
Yes.
So when we use his book, we go very slow and try to have some conversations around it. But it's every sentence is profound. It's really, really good.
And it really did change me as well, Eric. And the reason is because I always felt that I was I was on a treadmill. I was running and running and running and trying to get to a destination that was really never there. It's like the
Hmm.
horizon that you want to be able to reach, but further you run and further it goes away from you. And then people kind of like get desperate because I can never get too close. It's always getting away from me. So that's maybe people's perspective about life, about everything in general.
Whenever our goals and things are out there somewhere, it's very difficult to be present. That's why we try to have as many goals as we can about ways of being, about being happy, being joyful, and those kinds, and work on being those things now. Because I've found for myself and so many in the business community, and I deal mostly with successful business people, when we meet our goals, we just pick more. you know we just say, when we get the house and the condo or whatever it is and the vacation, then it's just a bigger one and the second country club. And that is what I've noticed. If we don't stop to be happy and grateful right now in this moment, the goalpost just keeps shifting on us. It just keeps going, oh no, it's never enough. So that's why I say it's so important. I love material things. I love trips. I love houses, all those things. But I just don't look for my purpose in them or my happiness in them. If I need to be happy right now in this moment talking to Dan, because that's what I'm doing,
Yes.
and then if I have, then I can really appreciate going skiing or taking a nice trip or something and not feel like, that my identity's tied up in it.
But then how, Eric, I mean, unfortunately, they mention a lot that technology has helped us communicate with people all over the world and connect with people on the other side of the planet. But yet also technology has damaged us in such a profound level. And one of this level is people have the tendency to compare their existing life with the one of influencers, or how come he makes this or he makes that or she succeeded and I'm still stuck in a job that I hate so much. So because this technology allows us to be able to see the world around us externally, but yet it impacts us internally. So what can we do to tell our listeners that this is their lives, this is the journey that they decided to take on for themselves? It doesn't mean that this should be the same for you.
I just think we need to look inside, not outside, for our happiness and our purpose. We need to look inside ourselves to find what we believe our purpose is, not to look out for culture's never going to think that we're enough. Culture's going to say, if you give away, $1 million to the food bank, you ought to build a school. Culture's never going to be satisfied with us in what we do and feel like we're enough. That has to be an inside job. So sometime we need to, and we're not teaching it to our kids at all, never mind at a young enough age. And you're talking about I was just watching a special on Instagram the other night and what it did to young girls and eating disorders and those kind of things. It was just awful.
I've seen that also this channel, and it's horrible on how they become, because now they put so much, I would say, physical change in themselves, and the concept of body dysmorphia and a lot of other eating
Yeah.
disorders that you mentioned, that really kind of really hurts the young girls in thinking what is the ideal body.
And I was at a reception last night, and a very, very successful real estate person in the Denver area said, I found myself just said this to me, last night. I found myself on Instagram, getting on to post and somebody comparing and feeling bad about it, and I got off. And I said, good for you. But I tell you, I use social media for our living in the gap, but I don't find my identity in it. I use it as a tool. I don't get on to find out, oh gosh, I'm doing good compared to so and so. Sometimes I like seeing. I like the aspect of it of seeing pictures of people I don't regularly see,
Okay.
but I don't spend a lot of time on it, and I don't find my identity in it. I find my identity by looking within and coming to a way that I feel very comfortable in my own skin, that I don't look to others to give myself my worth and what they think of me.
So okay,
Because
so
I
let's
Go ahead, Dan.
yeah, so let's focus on because I know our listeners, it's all great, everything in theory, but let's focus on practicality. So if, let's say, you would go and tell our listeners, these are strategies that you must take to be able to start changing your perspective, start living in the present. Don't focus too much on the past, because this is something that you cannot change. Forget about the future, because this is, not guaranteed. It's and you are the author of your destiny. You can decide what you want for your future, but what's really important is today. So those who are so focused about what other people think of them, what they should do about their life, what society, the culture, as you mentioned, that they always expect more from you. If you give 1 million, they want you to give 10. If you give 10, they want you to give 100. How to detach yourself, Eric, from all that? That's what we want to be able to kind of give valuable tools. So when they leave this podcast with you and I, Eric, they could say, wow, I learned something.
Yeah. Well, in meditation, we teach to detach from thoughts by we sit and we follow our breath. And when a thought comes up, we notice it. As soon as we notice the breath, we're present. We say, don't dwell on the thought, let it go, return to your breath. So every time a thought comes up or an emotion or what, you notice it, you let it go, let it be, and return to your breath. You don't entertain it. You don't go down the rabbit hole. You just let it go and come back to your breath. I think the other thing that is training us to detach from all the external things. Because so when I come up and see myself and get mad at somebody, or I want to insult them, or they've insulted me, or I think of something I should have that I don't have and somebody else has, I'm jealous. It's the same thing. As soon as I notice myself doing it, I let it go and say thanks, but I'm not going there. I'm just going to be present with the person I'm with today. I'm just going to be doing what I'm doing. So I think it's a very intentional practice. And if you don't have some sort of practice, it's hard to achieve, because what I really want to distinguish, I want to operate at a level of consciousness and awareness, not at the level of thought. So when I notice I'm thinking all the time, but when I notice I get grabbed into the thought, particularly if it's not an empowering one, I just let it go and come back to being present. It's like training a puppy. It's being gentle with it. It's running off, you're bringing it back. It's running off, you're bringing it. So it's gentle. The mind is kind of like that. So when it's going off down one of those rabbit holes and I notice, just let it go and come back to this. Say, I'm not going there. And it is take a little practice, but that's what I found that works for me and so many others, is to just intentionally say, no, I'm going to take my focus back. I mean, business is great at grabbing our focus for advertisements and social media and everything, and they're not going to stop. That's what we do in business. We try to grab attention.
Yes.
But it's up to each individual to say, enough. No, I'm not going there. I'm going to limit what I do on social media. I'm not saying I never go on it, but I'm going to limit that time. I'm going to have some time either in nature or taking a mindful walk or meditating or do some practice that lets me take my focus back. I don't think it happens without some sort of practice. I haven't seen it anyway.
That is so true. Now, let me ask you a tricky question, Eric. Would you say that if, let's say, you, as you just mentioned, let it go and just like move on, even you have like a bad thought or you have like a depressing thought, those who could actually get rid of that thought quickly and go back to the moment, would you consider that a normal practice versus those who let it linger for too long and they could assume that they have some kind of mental illness?
I'm not an expert in mental illness, Dan. I think you're probably better, equipped than me. But, I think we all have a little of it, in this society. So I don't think it's, this a label that we can lay on others, because I think we all suffer for it. And I just think any time that we're relying on thought to give us the feeling of who we are, or if we're going to be happy or sad, we're going to be disappointed. If we can rely on consciousness, and Rupert Spira, another great spiritual teacher, talks about the screen, like living in a movie screen of presence. Now, our daily activities carry out in the movie, but the screen's unaffected, because we're all having up and downs in life and bad things happening. I mean, that life is a disaster, right? I mean, in so many ways, it's beautiful, but it's so, there's so many catastrophes in life all around us. If we're going to be, just our feelings and our self-worth is going to be all about just the daily experience, then I think it's very hard to be happy. But if we can reside in a background of presence and let life just play out from that awareness, then it doesn't impact us so much. And we can make choices about, what, I'm just going to pick the joy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to find the joy or the gratitude in everything that I find, because when I pick that, then I start seeing more things to be grateful and joyous about. That's the way the brain works. And if I if I decide to get ticked off and go down that, then I find more things to be ticked off about or more things to be discouraged about. So I find it, for me, it's a matter of making a conscious choice. If I'm not going there, I'm going to take the high road every chance I get. I'm going to look for the joy and happiness situation, because I'm not saying there aren't, devastation and sadness and disappointments and all those things. They're all there. But what do I choose? What do I choose to focus on, and what do I choose to manifest?
So for
Just
some
go.
people, sorry about that, Derek. So some
No.
people keep the negative thought in their mind for a couple of hours, and then they're going to jump in back into living as of today. So, but those who keep it for 5, 6 days are too long. Would you consider at this point that this should be alarming and there should be
Yeah.
something to?
Even a couple hours, once you start being aware of it, as soon as I'm aware of my mind going there, I say no. What do I got to do to change it? Do I meditate a little bit? Do I take a walk? Do I just let it go? What's it going to take? Because it does feed it. Hours do turn into days.
Yes.
I've got a really good friend that has depression, and he has done it without medicine. And it's not that he doesn't have bouts, but he's totally dedicated to not letting it get him. And he's got strategies that when he sees that black